All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another kind of delayed episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show with your hosts, Alex and Chris Lion Tamer Condit, your American villain voices, always serving up the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions. Usually, this is where I tell you to go follow the socials, which are linked in the show notes, but you don't need that reminder anymore because we have been in the lab coming up with new branding. So you see our lovely new logo. If you're watching on YouTube above us here, if you're on Spotify, Apple Music, you will see it as the icon for the show. You are still in the right place, even if you're not seeing our way overly grinning faces next to Peter With. And if you are watching on YouTube, you can see below me all the spots where you can listen, rate, review, subscribe, follow, and stay along for the Red, White, Claret, and Blue journey as we continue to go onwards and upwards. Chris, before I ask you how you are, I need to say happy birthday, Mom, even though I don't think that you're listening to this, but happy birthday to you. Love you. Chris, how are you? How was the zoo?
Oh, it was great. I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. Also, shout out to the NC Zoo. We don't do free ads, but, it's a zoo. If you're ever in North Carolina, go to the zoo. It's one of the best zoos in America. And I do have to give Alex credit. That was not we that were in the lab. That was he. It was just Alex. It was not me. I had nothing to do with it. I just said, all of this looks great. I like option 1 better than 2 or whatever it was. It was a lot like going to the eye doctor for me. I just had to pick number 1, number 2, number 2, number 3, and so on. How are you, Alex?
I'm struggling, man. So everybody can probably hear it in my voice. I'm sounding a little nasally. I got surgery last week. It was long overdue due to genetics and collegiate boxing career that I needed to get my nose fixed. Still got some tubes up in there, still dealing with the stitches and all that. And now I'm about to fly to Atlanta tomorrow. So that's going to be great to meet with my clients and drink some Coors Lights. And then I finally get all this out on Wednesday. Thank God, because it has been a very uncomfortable week. But other than that, I'm doing great.
Yeah, at least it's a short flight, right? 54 minutes.
Yeah, I contemplated canceling and driving, but I figure that'll be the flight will be a lot easier. Just get there in 45 minutes. I'll be good.
That's right.
So honestly, in addition to being in the lab, in addition to Chris traveling all across this great nation over the past week, we also haven't recorded because honestly, there hasn't been a lot to comment on. So we have a few things that we'll talk about today. They're kind of like one of our cold water episodes, but honestly, we couldn't even be pressed to try and come up with some crazy takes on all this stuff. We didn't really do an episode when Boubacar Kamara signed because he's one of our best players. We all know what a big win that was for Villa to keep him in the fold for supposedly 5 more years. We'll see how long that actually sticks. But honestly, what are we going to analyze about arguably maybe the second or third name on the team sheet, if not the first? So we've got a couple other things we'll talk about. U.S. tour, and then some stuff on the recruitment strategy and the lack of activity in the summer window. But Chris, how about we talk about the tour first and the team that is on the field as opposed to the people that we want to bring in? Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So Villa have not been winning much. How do you feel about that?
Nah, it doesn't. I think particularly in the preseason, it's more about process over result. And this is the first U.S. tour that they've made in the last handful of years. I mean, I'm sure there were some way back in the day that
I went to one way back in the day. I went to one way back in the day when I was in college.
Yeah,
played in Philly.
This is the first one I haven't made in recent memory. And a lot of that, like we've talked about, boils down to my travel schedule with work, where I actually have to make money. I can't fly all over the country and then tell my wife, by the way, I'm also flying out for the weekend to go watch my favorite soccer team play. Weirdly, that doesn't go over well in the house here in North Carolina. But I worry more about process over results. And I think that Unai Emery feels the same way. And I have only been able to watch bits and pieces and the highlights. I haven't been able to sit and watch the full preseason games. But I can look back to the games in Philadelphia a couple of years back when I was there, the game in Columbus last year when I went, and it's more about seeing players individually first, I think, and then collectively, because I think what Unai Emery is trying to do and the staff are trying to put together their best 11 and their best second 11, so to speak, even though it may not be a full 11, but I think they're trying to piece together the best squad they can based on the pieces they have available, based on full health. And so I think there have been some bright spots, even if you're worried about winning and losing, take that away for a minute. The biggest bright spots that I have seen, Daniel Malen looks like a star, albeit in preseason, but he has been lively. He has been active. He's got 4 assists and a goal. Ollie Watkins is another one who's really done well. And there have been a handful of other players that have played very well, even if the results necessarily aren't what we want them to be. But I mean, again, I'll look back to last year where Villa got not just beat scoreline wise, they got outplayed for 85 of the 90 minutes against Columbus. And at the end of the season, if you had those two teams play, I think the result is different. So you don't worry so much about the fact that we're just drawing against MLS competition or just beating St. Louis SC by a goal. I don't worry so much about that as much as how do the players look and how is everyone coming together. So there are some definite bright spots to highlight, I think, much more so than we need to worry about weaknesses at this point. What's your take on it, Alex?
Yeah, I don't care all that much. I mean, look, you would prefer to see them roll out 5-0 winners every single time, right? We would feel better about that than a bunch of 2-2 draws. But you're right. You're looking for the individual performances. You're looking at how good does the team look when it is supposed starters, first teamers, as opposed to when youth guys come on. Daniel Malen has that one goal that's just been doing the rounds on social media, sending a guy to the floor. You made a good point of Ollie Watkins looking maybe even a little bit stronger in the air, always been decent in the air, but, converting some good goals with his head. The other one that's certainly getting a lot of talk, though, is Emi Buendia. Some people saying it's really looking like he's fighting for his place. What's interesting is I think we all thought that he was out the door. And we'll talk about sort of what's happening with the summer window in another minute. But what I want to talk about is the fact that pre-ACL injury, he looked like he was going to be the centerpiece for Unai Emery in kind of that number 10 spot, second striker. And so to see him really seeming to work for it, doesn't seem like there's much of a market out there for him. And with Jacob Ramsey, rumors increasingly swirling around him going, I do think that Emi Buendia provides us a nice little depth piece across the front line. Not saying he's a week in, week out starter, but can do some stuff that's a little bit different and can play in that left role, can play in the central role and let Rodgers go left. So he allows Unai Emery to have a little bit of versatility across the front line that we didn't expect to have.
I agree. And you're right. Like if you think back 2 years ago, to go back to the Philadelphia thing again, like he was the best player on the pitch for the 45 minutes he was out there when he was in Philly. And that was the preseason warm up. And he ended up blowing out his knee that early on in that season, So I think that if he's going to stay, which it looks more and more like he's going to, I think that he is a good depth piece, not a player that, like you said, not a player that you're going to count on week in and week out to start and score, but a nice player to have as a tool in your toolbox, so to speak, especially with the rumors of JJ Ramsey, like you said. But even without that, even if we keep Ramsey, I think it's good to have a Buendia who's fit and fighting and ready to play, because even if he's a step slower than he used to be because of age and the injury, I think there's still a pretty decent player there. He showed out pretty well last year on loan, and I think in the right spot where you're bringing him on either in cup ties as a starter or as a spot starter or as a substitute in the right situation. I think that's the perfect situation for him at this point in his career.
And I mean, look, he was never a burner to begin with, right? His best attributes were his ability to pick out a pass, his creativity in and around the box, and that's something that ages a lot better than someone that's just a speedster beating guys outside for pace. So, he can come in, to your point, and pick some passes, unlock a defense that's sitting deep, maybe a bottom half of the Premier League table, or some early cup ties to give guys a break. This question just occurred to me. I'm curious your lukewarm take on it. Emi Buendia has been around Villa for a minute now. At one point, at least for like a month or two, I think he was our record transfer incoming. Do you think he's worth the money, or you think he's been a bust?
Oh, I think he's been worth the money. I do. I don't think there's a hesitation on my part for that. In part because, especially if you take health out of it, like the injuries, his ability, particularly once he got under Unai Emery, which again, it was cut short by injury, but once he got playing under Unai Emery, he looked like the player we wanted him to be. And you can still see it when you watch him now. You can still see, like you said, his ability to make things happen in and around the box and his ability to find a pass. It's still there. And he's still got pretty magic feet, really, if you ask me. Again, not maybe the player he was, and maybe a step slower because of the injuries. But I'd take him. I don't remember what we bought him for at this point, but given some of the other players that we bought and sold, I think he's been worth it. Yeah. What do you think?
Wasn't it like 30 million?
Yeah, I think it was somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah. I would maybe lean.
You think bust?
Neutral to bust. 30 million at that time to be the record purchase until I believe Ollie Watkins.
Yeah,
or maybe
33 or whatever.
Yeah. He played a lot of matches. First year, 35 matches, 4 goals, 6 assists, decent. 38 matches, 5 goals, 2 assists. Okay. Last year, 12 matches, no goals, no assists. Go to Leverkusen, 11 matches, 2 goals. Yeah. And then we'll see what he does this year. Now, you're right. Lost a whole year to injury, 23, 24. So you're looking at him being here for 4 years, 9 goals, 8 assists in total for the third highest buy in Villa history. I would kind of want that in like one season out of a player like that. So
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Yeah. Maybe I'm just more nostalgic, I guess.
I like him. Don't get me wrong, but I think that's one of those buys from that era that I'm looking at as if let me put it this way. Actually, I think this is a fair take. If people are going to argue whether Leon Bailey was worth the 35 million that we paid for him because they say he had one incredible season and then a lot of so-so ones, Leon Bailey's one incredible season was better than all of Emi Buendia's seasons combined in terms of production.
I mean, it's a fair point. It is. It's a fair point. And I do think there's more to it than just the numbers, but I also understand what you're looking at, and I am thinking back to when we bought him from Norwich, and he was he was expected to be a big time signing because he looked a big time player playing for them, So I get that, and like I said, it's probably nostalgia or just general feeling on my part more than anything. I hate to be vibes guy, but I feel like I'm being vibes guy.
Yeah, you can be vibes guy.
Yeah.
Vibes are good in the summer. Vibes are great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking about summer vibes, let's talk about our summer window and Villa's overall recruitment strategy. Villa are the 3rd lowest spenders in the EPL as of last check. It could honestly be lower because we've spent nothing. And now, new signing that I think a lot of people, including you, were excited about, Ashken is following Ned out the door to Anderlecht for what appears to be a loan with a fairly minimal buy clause. So he was bought for around 7 million euros, maybe 1 million in add-ons. I doubt he'll ever meet those. And I'm seeing rumored out just 7 to 9 million for Anderlecht to buy him at the end of the year. Costa 8 to 9 million in, and supposedly around 12 million for Red Bull to buy him. You know, what's going on with this, Chris? Only 3 Emery signings are consistent starters. Like, how are we feeling about the recruitment and how Villa seems to be treating some of these young, supposedly promising players?
Right. I think the more curious thing is how they're treating the young players, or how they're dealing with the young players, because I was pretty firm on record that I was very excited about Ashkan when I saw the signing. I listened to For the Love of Paul McGrath because they were really high on him, Neil in particular. I then looked him up, looked at his highlights, and there's plenty to see on him because he's got so many senior caps as such a young player. So there's a lot of highlights. It's not necessarily the super grainy cell phone footage that you sometimes get with some of these guys. You know, he's not playing in the biggest league in the world, but he's playing where there are actual cameras taking video, you know, and it can be put on tape. So I really thought that he was going to be a piece going forward, and maybe it will still happen. It doesn't seem as though Villa are monetarily attaching that sort of value to him, because he looked like the sort of player that you were going to bring in behind Tyrone Mings in time, you know, and Mings would kind of be moving on because Mings is, you know, getting older. Had a lot of speed at the center back position, really from a physical standpoint, seemed like the exact type of player that Unai Emery would want to bring in. So I'm a bit perplexed as to why such a small buy clause has been attached to him, unless Villa's brass just either don't think that the value is going to be there at the end of the season, or they just need to get money in and out for transfers. But I don't know. That doesn't seem a smart way to do it because he's such a young player and you've got him for virtually nothing. You know, that's my kind of spitballing take on it, because I really didn't think this through before we sat down and talked about it.
Yeah, I guess what I'll add is, you know, you've seen some people throw the Enzo deal into this discussion as well, right? Brought in for around 8, sold for 15. And unlike Ashkan and Ned, Enzo did it at a top 5 league in Spain and showed out. And so the idea of 15 million felt low. And you and I spoke about on a previous podcast the fact that when you look at it with the 30% sell on and what Villa could wind up getting in a few years as opposed to the PSR issue now, you know, maybe that deal makes a little sense, but it's still part of this idea that we're bringing in these young players, these supposedly promising players, and they're being sold without Unai Emery really taking much of a look at them. Costa had a decent shot in the lineup last year, but then disappeared at a very young age. But Ashkan has had, 15 professional minutes in front of Unai Emery in a preseason, playing with a bunch of youth guys? Like, are you telling me that you could make, and he's 17, 18 years old, like, are you telling me that you're making that firm of a decision on an 18-year-old with, to your point, like 90 some odd senior appearances in like one half of football, of preseason football? I just don't understand that. Enzo, same thing. Like, he's got all this great experience in Spain. Like, there's probably tape on him, but you don't think that you would want a little bit more than a few preseason matches to really decide, like, can I get through to this guy, get him to do what I want him to do? It's perplexing. Now what I am going to do is throw some cold water on this statement of only 3 Unai Emery signings are consistent starters. I think that as we go into this season, you know, we've said repeatedly, Unai is incredibly detail oriented, and you usually see these people grow either in the latter half of the year or into the second year and become much more regular players. I think we're expecting Malen, we're expecting Maatsen, we're expecting Onana to be much bigger regulars in the lineup this year. So now you go from 3 to 6. That's half the lineup. He's been here for a couple years. Like, that kind of makes sense. But I am confused by the youth player transfer policy because you could sell me on the idea of we are buying young potential and using that to turn a profit to fund bigger moves elsewhere in the squad. I don't understand how 2 million in for Ashkan, 3 million for Costa, and like 6 million in for Enzo is all of a sudden like curing our PSR nightmare issues. It's not bringing in enough money. So why wouldn't you guys want these? Why wouldn't you want these guys around the squad to contribute, to grow, to potentially grow that value so that at least Ashkan could be 15 next year. Costa could be 20. Enzo could be 30, 35. Like, it feels like we're cutting bait much too soon, particularly when you look at the squad and it feels kind of thin in a lot of areas.
I agree, and I think that's a really good way to put it. And I did want to say, in terms of like the 3 regular starter tweet that got a decent amount of traction on Villa Twitter, I don't know that that's necessarily fair, because the John Duran sale makes a huge difference, right? The Moussa Diaby sale makes a huge difference. Like, both of those players would be regular contributors, but they had to sell Duran or Watkins, and it ended up being Duran. Diaby got the call from Saudi, and he wanted to go, so that had to happen. Like, those are different things. I texted you when we were talking about this. I think that the squad was better than it looked under Steven Gerrard. I think that there were some pieces there that are now fundamental pieces. Ollie Watkins being probably the biggest example of
Luka Dean,
a guy who's
get a minute. Luka Dean couldn't get a minute.
Dean, sure, Luka Dean, right? Absolutely. Luka Dean had a really nice assist in the Nashville game. By the way, if you haven't seen it, just curled a beautiful ball that Watkins was able to head in like a laser. So those two seem to be on the same page, right? So there was a decent squad there. It wasn't a relegation zone area, squad, even though they were sitting there. So I do think that it's fair to look at some of these moves with the youth players and wonder what's happening. And I think that as time goes on, we'll have to revisit this idea and see if our concerns are valid or not.
You know what I do also want to pour cold water on, though, is a comment that I've seen. I think Total Villa made it on Twitter that young players aren't going to want to sign for us if they keep seeing the young players brought in for a year, loaned and sold back out. What young player isn't signing for Chelsea? Even though the fact that they have like 3 squads full of players, you think they're promising these guys minutes? You don't think that they see guys languishing in the reserves or only playing Conference League games for like 3 years, getting loaned repeatedly out before they're sold for pennies, and everybody is still signing there? So no.
Man City.
Yeah. If you have the money, if you're showing them a program, if you're showing them that they will play somewhere, they will come. So cold water on that. This isn't inhibiting future guys from signing for us. This isn't why I can't believe why I'm forgetting his name, the Norwegian kid didn't sign for us and went to City instead. Like that's not why. All we're saying at this point is that like time value of money, the inflation basically making these in out for the same price. I understand the accounting of it. You bring in Ashkan for 7 million, sign him to a 3 to 4 year deal. Technically, the book value is only 1 to 2 million a year, and you're bringing in 9 million next year on top. So it's a 7 million profit for the year. Right. Mm-hmm. It's still, in the grand scheme of things, doesn't feel like it's moving the PSR needle in a way that is enabling us to make a big move elsewhere. Right. And so that kind of leads me to the next question, Chris. Unai Emery in a recent interview essentially said something to the effect of like, yeah, maybe something's going to happen before the end of the transfer window. But honestly, right now, I'm not really focused on that. I'm focused on our structure, which to me in that interview was essentially him saying, there's nothing on the horizon. This is the squad that we're going with to the season, and we're just going to try and maximize the most out of it. Even at full health, do you feel like this team is good enough?
Good enough for what?
Okay. You answer the question.
Yeah. So first, I think it's what Emery has to say. Like he can't, and maybe not has to, but it's been pretty consistent now for the last.
Have to say that. Sorry to jump across you, but like he could say, yeah, we're still looking to be active in the market. Like we're still trying to make some things happen, whatever. But he kind of said there's nothing incoming. So we're going to do what we can.
But Villa have also been pretty close to the chest over the last handful of transfer windows, right? Deals just come out of nowhere. And I can appreciate that about the way they do business, because you don't necessarily want everything out there, because then you become another club that wears red and is rumored to have interest in every single player that ever existed on earth. So you don't want that necessarily, because it undermines your potential transfer strategy. It undermines your negotiation ability. And also, like right now, that is what I want Emery focused on, is the structure, because I assume that the backroom team has the brief of whatever it may be that he wants, and they're working as best they can within the financial constraints that they have to bring that to the fold. And we can't address this lack of movement in the transfer window without addressing the fact that they are hampered by PSR. Villa are hampered by PSR. They are. John McGinn spoke about it to Birmingham Mail earlier today or earlier yesterday. I don't remember which it was. It's a constraint that the club have to deal with, and they are doing what they think they can. So there's that aspect of it too that needs to be at least acknowledged, if not excusing the lack of activity. But we do have to sell to buy here, and who are you willing to give up? And now, as to answer your question, is this team good enough at full health? At full health, I believe this team is good enough to challenge for European places. I don't know if that is necessarily top four, but I think that as they are currently constructed, they would be able to get themselves in the top 6 or 7. We'll see how that shakes out. And we still have, and I'm going to sound like a dork or a broken record here, but we still have Unai Emery leading the team, and you can't discount what that's worth, because he has, for the last 3 years now, always gotten the club to a European berth. And even when things started slowly last season, even when things tapered out the season before that, they've always managed to be in the conversation. And I think we're going to be seeing something similar this season. Obviously, you and I will do a preview in the coming weeks here. But to answer the question of is it good enough? Is it good enough to win the league? No. Is it good enough to win Europa? Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Would they probably need some sort of January loanee to really get over the hump there? Probably. So like those are going to be sort of the things I think we need to watch, because Villa are still going to need to be extremely shrewd in the market. That's not going to change I don't think over many years. I think we're looking at least a 5-year plan here, because remember the first 5 years were get to Europe, and they achieved that in year number 3, right, with Unai Emery. I think the next 5 are maintain Europe and grow the brand. And then the next 5 after that, if we're being realistic, are challenge for league and challenge for, European titles. And by European titles, I really mean Champions League, right?
Yeah. Look, in a mythical FIFA world where everyone is healthy all year long, is this enough to fight for 5th or 6th place and win Europa League? Maybe, yeah. Cumulative fatigue certainly would come in because you can't like start the guys week in, week out. My problem is the team isn't deep enough. Regardless of whether there's full health, I think accumulated fatigue just means that when you rotate guys in, you are not strong enough to accomplish the goals that we want. And we're looking at a team with a lot of players that miss a lot of minutes. Matty Cash is always out for a decent chunk of the season. Ezri Konsa over the past few years usually misses a couple months. Same thing with Pau Torres and Tyrone Mings. Left back, Luka Dean actually very, very steady. Yuri Tielemans just ran his effing legs off last year. Who knows how his muscles have kind of recovered from that. Boubacar Kamara, obviously used to some long injury layoffs, misses a lot of time. Same thing with Onana. McGinn, fairly dependable. Ali, obviously Iron Man.
Yeah.
And that's about it. So like these guys are gonna miss minutes. We've got a team. I won't say they're injury prone. But it's not a team of guys that you expect to get 35, 38 games out of. So I am concerned about the depth and the ability to fight on multiple fronts. And you go back to 2018 when Tottenham was building the new White Hart Lane or the new Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and they were the first team in EPL history to spend $0, £0, £0, €0 in the summer transfer window. They had a young team. They had a great manager at the time. And so they ultimately wound up finishing 4th and next year 6th. And we've kind of seen them tail off a little bit since then,
Champions League now, though.
Fall into competing more with us than with the teams at the top of the table. You can't take your foot off the gas and just keep saying, we run it back, we run it back, we run it back with a bunch of guys that are a year older. And ultimately that'll catch up to you. Now, I understand our hands are tied with the financial realities of both the EPL and UEFA. So I don't necessarily know what the answer is to this. I just, understanding that reality, I guess I will say that my expectations are not super high, as a bit of a hint to where I might wind up during our preseason preview.
Somebody's got to be the downer on this podcast, and it ain't going to be me.
Listen, I love the team. I love the manager. I love the guys. I want like 4 more of them. If we had 4 more, I'd be like 3 more. I would be like, yeah, I'm feeling really good about this year. Like it's not the talent of the players or Unai Emery. I'm concerned about the depth. That's really what I think this year is going to come down to.
Yeah. Fair point.
That's all we really had written out. Chris, anything else that you wanted to touch on?
I mean, I did want to just you put it in the rundown. I did want to point out that Villa have been steadfast that Watkins and Rodgers are not for sale. And I think that's key. Obviously, they both are, because everyone's for sale at some price. But the idea is that the number is so high that it's virtually untouchable, or you're just going to have to break the bank to come get them. And I think that's especially true of Watkins, because who's going to start at the top if he goes? There would have to be someone in place, a deal in place for him to leave.
I mean, again, like I don't like having one player at a position. Mm-hmm. You would have to sell him and bring in 2 people, in my opinion. So even if Villa sign any one of a number of the strikers that they're supposedly looking at, I don't think that means that Ali goes out the door. I think that's competition for Ali, and a rotation, a change in formation, something like that. It's not that he's going anywhere. I think we would need to have 2 deals in place before they would even consider letting him go for one of the astronomical figures that they're putting on his head.
Yep, agree. But I did want to point that out, that those 2 seem to be the most untouchable. Obviously, with Kamara re-signing He's not going anywhere. Luka Dean looks like he's going to get another deal, I should say. And again, he's playing super well this preseason. So I think the players that we have are good. I think you're right that the depth is not where we need it to be. But we'll see how things shake out, and we'll I'm sure be doing a preview once you're done with your travels and before the season starts.
Yeah, we'll see when
as of right now, I've only got one more trip. I've only got one. What?
What did you say? I said we'll see when we ever have a free evening at the same time again.
As of right now, I have one more trip for the rest of this month. For the rest of this month.
Okay. All right. So we'll at least get a season preview in, and then we'll see if the podcast collapses once the season starts.
No promises.
No promises.
We can't let your hard work here go for nothing. You just did all this awesome branding.
That's true. T-shirts and hats coming soon. Nah, Chris.
It's spun cotton.
Don't no. We're not starting fights. We're not big enough. We have not enough clout to start fights yet. That stays in the group chat. And on that note, before Chris gets us in more trouble, I'm going to cut this one off. It's been great to chat with you again, my friend. We will talk again soon. And once again, happy birthday to my mother. Hi, Mom and Dad.